the prince who chose love. Prince Aldrich stood at the towering windows of the castle's highest tower, watching the sun dip below the horizon like a golden coin disappearing into the earth's purse. The kingdom of Valorith stretched before him in all its evening glory, rolling hills dotted with prosperous villages, merchant roads bustling even at dusk, and the great river that carried trade ships from distant lands. All of this would one day be his to rule, his parents reminded him daily. All of this, and yet it felt as hollow as an empty suit of armor. "Your Highness," came a soft voice from behind him. He turned to see Mira, the castle's head seamstress, carrying fresh linens for his chambers. Her dark hair was braided simply, and her hands showed the honest calluses of her trade. When she smiled, which she did now, tentatively, her entire face seemed to light from within. "Please, just Aldrich when we're alone," he said, as he had asked her countless times before. "How was your day in the workshops?" "Busy, but pleasant. Lady Catherine's wedding dress requires 17 yards of imported silk, and the embroidery alone will take 3 weeks." She set down the linens and moved to straighten his already perfect chambers, though they both knew it was an excuse to linger. "And what would your dress require?" The words escaped before he could stop them, hanging in the air like morning mist. Mira's hands stilled on the curtains she'd been adjusting. "My lord, Aldrich, you know such talk is dangerous." "Only if we let it be." For months their conversations had danced around this growing attraction. What had begun as casual exchanges, a prince acknowledging a skilled craftswoman, had deepened into something neither could name aloud. Aldrich found himself seeking her out, making excuses to visit the workshops, lingering in corridors where she might pass. Mira, for her part, had begun to look for him too, her work taking her to parts of the castle that happened to align with his daily routines. "Your parents have already arranged your betrothal to Princess Evangeline of Korith," Mira reminded him gently. "The announcement comes at next month's Harvest Festival." Aldrich's jaw tightened. Princess Evangeline was beautiful, accomplished, and perfectly suitable, everything a prince's bride should be. She was also as cold as winter marble, and regarded him with the same enthusiasm she might show for a particularly tedious piece of embroidery. Their courtship had been a series of stilted conversations about trade agreements and diplomatic protocols. "What if I don't want what's been arranged for me?" he asked. "Then you would be the first prince in history to have that luxury." That night, Aldrich barely slept. He thought of Mira's laugh, the way she bit her lower lip when concentrating on her needlework, how she spoke about her craft with genuine passion. He thought of Princess Evangeline's perfect posture and empty smiles. He thought of the throne that awaited him, heavy with expectations and traditions he'd never questioned, until now. The next morning brought a royal summons. King Aldrich Sr., his father had never been creative with names, sat behind his massive oak desk, examining trade documents. Queen Isabella stood by the window, her bearing as rigid as her crown. "Sit, son." The king's voice brooked no argument. "We need to discuss your future." "The betrothal announcement has been moved up," Queen Isabella said without preamble. "Princess Evangeline arrives tomorrow for the formal ceremony. The wedding will be held within the month." Aldrich felt the walls of the chamber pressing closer. Tomorrow? But the harvest festival? "Has been deemed unnecessary pageantry," his father interrupted. "Korith grows impatient with delays, and frankly, so do we. You're 24, Aldrich. It's past time you settled into your responsibilities. What if I'm not ready for marriage?" His parents exchanged a look that spoke of conversations held outside his presence. "Ready or not, duty calls," the Queen said. "You'll find that marriage, like ruling, becomes easier with practice." That afternoon, Aldrich sought out Mira in the castle's sewing chambers. She worked alone, her skilled fingers guiding silver thread through midnight blue fabric. The afternoon light streaming through the tall windows turned her hair to burnished copper. "They're moving up the announcement," he said without preamble. Her hands stilled, but she didn't look up. "I know. The whole castle knows. Preparations have been underway since dawn." "Mira." He stepped closer, and she finally raised her eyes to meet his. "Come away with me." "What?" "Tonight, after the castle sleeps. We could take horses from the stable, follow the merchant road east. I have gold, enough to start a new life somewhere they'll never find us." She stood so quickly her chair toppled backward. "You're mad. You can't simply abandon your kingdom for..." "For what? For love? Why is that madness?" "Because you're a prince." Her voice cracked with emotion. "You have obligations, responsibilities to thousands of people. I'm just a seamstress, Aldrich. I work with my hands and sleep in the servants' quarters. And you're the most real person in this entire castle. When I talk to you, I don't feel like I'm reciting lines from a play someone else wrote." He reached for her hands, calloused and warm. "I would rather be a happy commoner with you than a miserable king without you." Tears gathered in her eyes. And what of Princess Evangeline? What of the alliance between the kingdoms? What of your people who need their future king? "My father ruled before me. He can continue to rule. My younger brother Marcus would make a fine heir. He actually enjoys all the protocol and politics that I find stifling." "You would truly give up a crown? For me? I would give up anything for you." That night, as the castle settled into sleep, two figures slipped from the servants' entrance into the moonlit courtyard. Aldrich had packed light, some clothes, his mother's jewelry to sell if needed, and a leather pouch heavy with gold. Mira carried only a small bundle of belongings and her sewing kit, her hands shaking as they prepared the horses. "There's still time to change your mind," she whispered as they led the mounts toward the castle gates. "There was never any choice to make," he replied. "Not once I realized what love actually felt like." They rode through the night, following deer paths and forgotten roads that Aldrich remembered from childhood adventures. By dawn, they had covered enough ground to see the kingdom's borders, a range of gentle mountains that divided Valareth from the independent territories beyond. As the sun painted the sky in shades of rose and gold, they paused beside a stream to rest the horses and break their fast with bread and cheese from Aldrich's pack. "What will they do when they discover we're gone?" Mira asked, washing her face in the cold mountain water. "Send search parties initially. Father will be furious. More about the political embarrassment than my absence, I suspect. The betrothal will be cancelled, which might actually work in everyone's favor. Princess Evangeline never seemed particularly enthused about marrying me either." And after that, Aldrich was quiet for a long moment, watching the water dance over stones worn smooth by countless years of current. "I expect they'll eventually declare me dead or mad and crown Marcus. He'll probably be relieved. He's always been better suited to royal life than I ever was." "Do you regret it?" The question was barely audible above the stream's babble. He turned to look at her, this woman who had given up her secure position to follow him into an uncertain future. Her hair caught the morning light, and her eyes held both fear and hope in equal measure. "Ask me in a year," he said, taking her hand, "when we've built whatever life we're going to build together. Ask me when we're old and gray, sitting by our own fireside. But regret loving you? Never." They crossed the border into the free territories that afternoon, two travelers among many on the great trade roads that connected kingdoms and city-states. Behind them, bells would soon toll in Valareth's capital, announcing the inexplicable disappearance of the crown prince. Search parties would scour the kingdom, diplomats would scramble to manage the crisis with Koreth, and King Aldrich Sr. would wonder how he had failed to understand his own son. But ahead lay possibilities neither prince nor seamstress had ever dared imagine. Cities where no one knew their faces, trades to be learned, a life to be built thread by thread, choice by choice. It would not be easy. Aldrich had never worked with his hands, and Mira had never lived without the security of the castle walls. But they would learn together, grow together, create something entirely their own. As evening approached and they sought lodging in a small border town, Mira squeezed Aldrich's hand. "I love you," she said simply. "Not because you were a prince, but because you were brave enough to stop being one." "Then we're both brave," he replied, "because you were willing to become something more than you ever thought possible." The innkeeper who gave them a room for the night saw only a well-dressed young couple, obviously in love. Perhaps merchants' children eloping despite family objections. He had no way of knowing that the man who signed the register as Alan had once been heir to a throne, or that the woman beside him had sewn gowns for queens. They were simply two people who had chosen love over duty, uncertainty over security, and each other over everything else the world insisted should matter more.